challenges, especially for him, but arguably for anybody. Magnus Carlsen, good news is he does have the white pieces, and Hikaru literally just arrived a second ago. It looks like they waited for him with a round, and the games are beginning. Magnus Carlsen has chosen a line which we've seen him use on and off. It is the mix of the Bogo Indian and the, what do you call it, Queen's Gambit. He gets rid of his light square bishop, goes bishop b4 check, and then decides to put his pawns on light squares d5, c6.
Yeah, you mean the dark square bishop.
Yeah, the pawns on light squares after he exchanged the dark square bishops. I'm sorry. Let's see if we can get a better angle. We're gonna have our little board up here in a second. So far, I believe this is all theory. The legend of Swedish chess, Ulf Andersson, used to employ this system and would never lose this position. But it is a slightly passive choice. Magnus might have been unhappy with his recent opening outings against Hikaru. Let's not forget he lost in the rapid leg of the event in like 10 moves, being a piece down. So he wants to avoid that, and this time at least make it out of the opening without any missing pieces.
Yeah, the players seem to be tired. This is already the 9th game of the day, so they are playing slowly. They are exhausted. They are humans. That's good to know.
Yeah, all of this is pretty standard stuff. Queen e7, rook d8 is also the typical plan that Carlsen employs here. Hikaru waits to move his light square bishop, because whenever you move it, then black will jump at the opportunity to play d takes c4, gaining half a tempo. Therefore, Hikaru delays that. And after queen c2, Carlsen says, okay, you know what, I can't wait forever till you move that bishop. I'm going to capture anyway and go c5. Now his rook does very good work on d8 because it stops d5, which will otherwise be unpleasant. Hikaru just castles, and the typical continuation would be something like cd4, knight d4 and bishop d7, trying to solve his problems by going bishop, knight to c6.
He played exactly what you said. I believe bishop d7 on the board, preparing knight c6, so everything is going fine. But as you said, very passive position, so this could just be a solid draw.
Yeah, rook fd1 doesn't fight against knight c6, and if black gets that, he normally should equalize. I was a bit curious if he could try something like queen b3, but it looks like Hikaru is also not in the mood for any crazy adventures in this game against Magnus. He plays it safe, goes knight c6, bishop c6, and bishop to b5, getting rid of more pieces, and the most likely outcome would be that pieces keep disappearing from the board, and a handshake is looming.
Do you think Magnus will try to fight, keep some pieces on the board?
Well, there's only that much fight left in this position. The pawn structure is equal. Both sides have 2 rooks and a knight each. The rooks will probably get exchanged one way or another because they have to stay on the open files. So I do not think that either side can do all that much. Magnus is a side that still has to be a little more careful because his queenside pawns are a little more vulnerable than the white queenside pawns, but I'd be shocked if anything drastic happens here. Yeah, after rook c8, Nakamura took on d8, queen takes. Of course, you don't want to allow bishop takes c6, crippling your pawns. Queen takes, rook d1, queen back to e7, bishop c6, rook c6. So material keeps disappearing. It's time to make a move like h3, safeguard your king. Maybe queen a4, but it doesn't seem to have a big impact either, just a6. Yeah, this position is absolutely balanced. I can't even think of a trick. Hikaru plays queen d2. Well, that's at least half of a trick. Queen d8 check could be a little inconvenient.
There are many moves that can meet it. G6, H6, including he just went back with the rook to guard the back rank.
It's at least, what has he done?
Queen d4, I believe, and
centralizing, why not?
a6.
Queen d4, a6,
To
h3.
blunder the pawn, h3, opening
Black
the back
should follow
rank.
suit, play h6, and I believe Magnus has queen d6, inviting the exchange of queens as well.
And
you can take this and go
with this
king to
move,
f8.
it seems.
There is not a whole lot to play for in this position. The rook can go to b6, but with the knight still on board, rook c7, followed by knight d7, neutralizes that tiny amount of pressure reasonably easily. Therefore, yeah, I guess Hikaru's just going to bring his king towards the center as well. Yeah, that's what he's doing. King f1, king e2. Both sides will centralize kings. The rooks are likely to get exchanged. Magnus plays knight d7. Maybe he wants to try to make something happen with knight e5, knight c4. But of course, there is nothing dangerous about the white position.
Maybe soon we will switch game because this doesn't seem to be the most exciting of the round, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm still curious. I expect a handshake soon, but as long as the game continues. You never know. Magnus avoided rook d8, exchanging the rooks. Looks like he does want to play on a little bit, but of course, he doesn't have anything. Rook b4. Maybe b5 is the idea. a4, knight c6, rook somewhere. Even this is equal. Hikaru's thinking a little bit. Sometimes it happens against, a guy with Magnus Carlsen's rightly earned reputation that you start seeing some ghosts even in the simplest of positions. He's played king d1, bringing his king over to c2 to cover the b2 pawn. Yeah, there's just not enough resources to grind out a win here. I guess Magnus gonna try something, maybe gain a little space on the king side. But yeah, very bad things would have to happen for either side to win or lose this game. There we see Leonard Otis getting in a bit of camera time before the round is over, grabbing some sneakers. Let's hope those were his sneakers and not Magnus's, who wanted to go for a run after the round. Not going to be able to do it now. f5 was played by Magnus, same idea as gaining some space, controlling the e4 square. Hikaru plays a4, stopping black from going b5. And Carlsen goes g5, as mentioned. This is the typical expansion on the king side. Magnus has made a little more progress than Hikaru over the last couple moves, but of course the balance remains undisturbed.
What do you think if we just quickly look at another position and then come back to this endgame?
Which one has caught your attention?
Giri Kramnik. Oh, they exchanged queens already. Before I thought it was an exciting position, but now it's just weird. What are those pawns? Doubled pawns on the e file and now this b6. How many are there?
So we won't see it again. In the meantime, Magnus Carlsen is still trying to unbalance this endgame against Hikaru Nakamura. But so far nothing dramatic has happened, even though black got his pawn to h4, which in the very distant future could be useful gain of space. Hikaru now starts simplifying by going e4, rightly so, after knight d5. Pawn takes, and pawn takes. Magnus gonna be thinking about knight f4 here when after the exchanges.
Knight f6 on the
This
board.
could be a target, but it's still very drawish, so he kept the knights on the board, went knight f6. Yes, knight e5, knight h5, and now we see the point of fixing the structure here. If this knight manages to get here, this will be a target, but of course.
Nakamura prevented it with knight d3, but you were right that Magnus Carlsen, from a totally equal position, managed to create something.
Yeah, it's still an equal position, but white has to be a little careful. And both sides are running very low on time. Both have 1 minute left. Hikaru goes a5, changing the structure a bit. Probably it's a good move. He wants to go b4, followed by knight c5 to create his own outpost for the knight. Because his knight on g3, while it looks nice, it doesn't really do all that much. So if white had time to... Yeah, I was going to say b4, but b4 might run into rook c4. But to get b4 and knight c5, then he would all of a sudden at least have no problem.
That would be like a mirror pawn structure, doing the same as black did on the king side.
Yeah, king goes to d6. Is this the current position? I keep clicking on update here, rook c7. Magnus wants to transfer his rook to the f file. Even though there's no entry squares currently, at least it would discourage white from pursuing any active operations on the queen side.
He has maneuvered his king to f6.
Yeah, back and forth. This knight on d3 is doing a very good defensive job, though, as long as it remains there, and it can't really be touched. It's hard to find any entry point into the white camp. And Magnus switches plans. He goes for e5, knight h5, wants to go knight f4. What he wants is to get this rook ending under the best circumstances. After an exchange here, he wants to be ready to play king e5. So, yeah, Hikaru has to be a bit careful because he's not in time for this b4, knight c5. Magnus took measures against that by going rook c7, defending b7 in advance. The rooks disappear from the board.
And knight f4 inviting a pawn endgame.
This could be Could this be trouble? I guess you can't take, because then
The black king will
you have to
enter
calculate.
the
I'm not
position,
sure.
but still.
I was gonna say
King
this, but
E5.
here you're in subzwang with black, so it's probably not a great idea.
Yeah, Nakamura
And
goes
Hikaru
for
has
it.
calculated everything, takes, and EF king d2, which to me looks like a draw. But hang on, this could be sharp. Even could white be better? Is that crazy?
No, it wouldn't be crazy, but he cannot go far with the white king
Five king
because
d3.
of the g4 push, creating a passed
Carlsen
pawn.
goes g4, of course, that's the idea, g4, f3.
Yeah, and the h pawn would promote.
I believe Hikaru has seen this coming and has seen that this is a positional draw if he goes g5, because these pawns can't, can't they be touched? No, this is this construction, right? King f7, e5.
Yeah, exactly. You
King
need to
g6,
keep
e6.
the pawns in an L shape, so the g5 pawn cannot be captured because the other pawn would promote, and if he heads towards the e pawn, then you do the same with the other pawn.
King e5, I believe Carlsen wants to hope for this, but king h2 or king f2 stops it, therefore it's a positional draw, and the guys agree. Well defended by Hikaru after he got under some slight pressure there, out of an equal position, but he did not crumble. Wesley So has won his game against MVL.
Yes, that means that Magnus Carlsen has 16.5 and Wesley So half a point. Oh, no, sorry. Magnus Carlsen on 17 and Wesley So a point behind. But there are still games going on. Levon Aronyan against Veselin Topalov seems to be another rook endgame.
I believe it's
Not a rook endgame anymore. It's a pawn endgame where Aronyan has just promoted. And this is
lost.
a win
It
because
is a draw if you have a pawn on f2, but with the king, with the h pawn, the queen just keeps giving checks, coming closer and closer, and sooner or later your king will be forced in front of that pawn, which would be very bad news. Let's say queen g4, king f2, queen h3, king g1. I'm probably not capable of winning this.
Yeah, but it was winning because
I know
the
this
king,
is winning, but
the
just
king
give
is
me a
very
moment.
close. So yeah, and then you come with the king. He can promote, but king g3 and it's mate, and there's
This
no
will do
check.
the trick, yeah.
So yeah, it's winning.
Fortunately, yeah. Veselin resigned before all these dangerous stalemate ideas appeared.
Caruana has beaten Vishy Anand. That's a surprise result because Caruana was having a bad day today and Vishy was doing fine. Can we have a look at that game?
Yeah, queen is h-pawn. Now, we've seen earlier that the position they ended up with seemed a bit
Unpleasant,
passive
but
for Vishy. And Fabiano just exchanged queens, grabbed the c5 pawn, pushed his c-pawn up the board. And yeah, it's opposite color bishops, but as long as there's rooks on the board, that does not mean an automatic draw. So yeah, smooth victory for Fabiano Caruana. Of course, all these guys are world-class players, so even though they have a bad day in an individual game, they're always terribly dangerous. Therefore, Vishy Anand, well, at least he's quite far behind Magnus Carlsen now, so it's going to be an uphill battle for him to rejoin the conversation for tournament winner.
yeah, if we switch back to the camera here in the hall, we see the players arriving, leaving. There are some signatures giving, and also you might have a chance to take a picture with Hikaru Nakamura.
I'm sure the players greatly appreciate that you don't let them escape for dinner. Jump at them, don't let them leave. The players are, of course, incredibly tired after today and will get their well-deserved rest. There's 9 more rounds of blitz action coming tomorrow. Let's have a